In case you needed to know, have you checked the date today? Sometimes I go at least 2 days without looking at a calendar. It's recommended at times. Because time's not real. Time's not real. Until we have to check back in with it. Until we're reminded that we're woefully obligated to it. But outside of that, time's not real. Hi. It's me. Hi. 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 I fixed the camera, as you can see. It's fixed on me for now. For now, between like 20 scene changes between now and the end of stream, to be determined. To be determined, but for now, it's looking okay. You're looking okay. Sultry, thank you again for the 35 months. Gadamati, that's...
You got something to drink?
I have. Coincidentally, I do. Isn't, and it's my go-to. It's my standard cup, actually. I can tell where I over-poured. Yeah, I was grabbing. I was way ahead of you. I'm right on it, but hi, Nandu. Do I look exactly like my emote when I do that? Guess we can go back and make that a pink cup. We can go back and make that a pink Kirby cup. I think it would work. And would it be too distracting? I don't know. Some things get so easily lost with emotes. There really is like a fine art to making emotes, just to make everything still like apparent as it's shrunk down, because if you put too much detail into something, it'll either go completely unnoticed or it just kind of mucks up the entire image, which is really strange. Or so I found, which is why I haven't made one in a very long time, and I didn't make that one. I did get too much sun today. Feeling a little headachy, feeling a little bitchy. It'll pass. It'll pass. It's one of those things where, like, hovering above the stream button, I'm like, do I wanna? Do I wanna? I'm gonna regret it if I don't. I'm gonna regret it. Fine. Boop. Nandu, thank you for the hydrate. It's also not too late to be first. You can be first. You too can be first, but only one of you can be first. It was good to see some of y'all in Brother Zombie's stream earlier. That was a fun one, huh? It's so rare that I get to take a stream with me outside today. I did some yard work, and some icky, dirty yard work. I say that. I like getting my hands dirty. It's good for me. It's one of those things that I would almost indirectly prescribe to anybody. Like, it is good to get your hands dirty. Work with the soil, but not when it's violently hot outside. Not when you have to struggle to stay hydrated. I got a few things on the docket today. A couple of articles about, let's see, intellectual humility, physical activity, and the benefits of. One on music and the developing mind in adolescence. Who don't? Hi, Heller. And then a couple of fluffier, lighthearted ones. Psychology Today has kind of been on a roll lately. I used to kind of have them on my doo-doo list. But, you know, it's one of those things. It's always, like, contingent upon the author and their bona fides as to what they include in the article, right? It's not the entire site that sucks. But I don't know. They've been on a roll, to me, subjectively. They've been on a roll lately with some quality material. So we've got one on the importance of critical thinking skills. I know those nice subjective terms, but we do associate it with executive functions sometimes. Not totally tantamount to, I don't know, that too often passive-aggressively prescribed common sense. Use your common sense. I wouldn't say it's the same thing at all. Because you hear somebody say, use your common sense. That's like one of those, you're never really sure what they mean by that. They're putting themselves, it's a projected like insecurity thing. They're putting themselves into your situation and describing how they would have handled it as they would define common sense. I don't know what the common denominator is for common sense. Pain point for me though, because I heard it too much growing up. Hella good to see you. Thank you for being first, by the way. For those that don't know, I fixed that like a month ago to where you use that and you're officially first. It's not a running gag where it's like 20 people can be first. It was fun while it lasted. Since I did start a little bit later and I want to kind of make it a long play Sunday, we can go ahead and jump into the articles. Share with Sultry, who was actually first. She was among my first subscribers, I think. Which is cool. She's done it 35 months. Which, seeing that had me realize, like, I think I was only streaming 4 or 5 months ahead of that before she found me. And I haven't scared her off somehow. So that's cool. Heller, how have you spent your time this weekend? It's good to see you. Yeah, it was nasty. So there's like, we had this bad winter storm. Well, we had a couple, but you know, we had like an infamous one 3 years ago. It was the one where like, so we lived pretty close to the infamous Interstate 35, like parallel to it, and that's like our main drag to get to and from like the hospital district in Fort Worth, which we both spend a lot of time in, especially my partner, who goes much more frequently than I do. So those may remember, there's a point to this. Those who may remember like 3-4 years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, we had that bad winter storm where like we had people on water shortages and like water contaminations where we had to like boil water for days and like reserve it and meal prep days in advance. A lot of people's pipes burst. And then we had this like, I think this made national news, but there was like a 140 car pileup on 35. My point for referencing all of this is like when that storm happened, the majority of our bushes around our house also died or came close to it, such that those that did survive are only just now kind of normalizing from where they were prior to that storm. And the ones that didn't survive, I've tried to like prune and remove the root systems from, because a couple of them were honestly pretty fuck ugly, and I was wanting to make changes with them anyway. So you cut, like today, there is part of a root, there was a remaining root system that was part of one of those fuck ugly bushes that were hanging on that I tried to chip away at before, and it just wasn't going anywhere. And I checked today, and it finally had died enough to where I could just kind of like, you know, strong arm it out of the ground. But then had to bust it up with an axe, and then, you know, squaring up the other bushes so they're cute and relatively symmetrical. So a little bit of that, and then I had a, it's not a pothos. I have this like pothos-looking plant that doesn't really grow out in like a vine, but the leaves are really similar, except the reason I brought it outside, and decided to plant it today is because I know it was an indoor plant, but I noticed when I was watering it, it had these like little dewdrops that would form on the end of the leaves, and you know, that's fine. Just not super conducive for like an indoor plant. So I put that outside in the flower bed, and yeah. Got some Sunny D. I old man bitched at at what was probably a 16-year-old for driving too fast by me. Me covered in dirt while this kid drives by in a 20-mile-an-hour zone going 50, and me screaming, "Slow the fuck down!" And, you know, are there better ways to handle that? Maybe totally conflict-free. I don't have kids, but there are plenty of them in the neighborhood. Thus, my vigilance was a little extended while out there. But yeah, it was one of those things like, okay, my neighbors can hear me. They know what I do for a living. That's not really reflective of, like, emotional intelligence. I was hot. I was stanky. I had a really balmy butt cheek going on. You know, I just, I was ready to throw down. I was just feeling scrappy, is what happened. I was daring them to pull over. No, it was, I could have addressed that better. Real talk, I could have addressed that better. I should have thrown something. I should have thrown that root that I pulled out and popped their tires. I think that would pretty abruptly solve the issue, I think, proactively, you know? No, I was very much in my head about it afterwards, super judgy. I mean, what else could I have said? I didn't have to project. I don't know. I didn't recognize the car. Not above talking to my neighbors about their kids' driving habits, if, you know, if I'm familiar with what's going on in the hood. Just a quick, hey, I thought you'd like to know. Do with this information what you will. Some things I let slide. Some kids have had parties nearby. I've let this slide. Like, I was a teenager once. I reflect on that too. Like, I got away with some shit. You need to do that for, you know, healthy growth span and development. Like, you need to be able to have some autonomy, some agency. But there are also opportunities where, like, yeah, intervention is necessary too. Balance. Some things just don't fall on me though. You know, just have to remind myself of, like, it's not so much it's not my job thing, it's just not my responsibility necessarily in some cases. On that note, here's an article on intellectual humility. Saw a bunch of movies. There are several that I want to see. That actress that was in Ozark, that I guess plays the new Silver Surfer, she's in a movie where she's like a school teacher. I guess it's a horror movie, but she's in a movie where she's a school teacher and her entire classroom disappears. That looked interesting. In addition to, you know, the big superhero movies. What did you get to? I'm gonna have to catch like a matinee this week or something. Weapons, that was one of them. That was it. I was like, is it Monsters? It's one of those one-word titles. It's one of those one-word titles, not like It Came in the Dark. Or I Know What You Did Last Arbor Day. It wasn't one of those. Nice punchy one-word title. It's bonkers though. I'm into it. We need a surprise, especially when it comes to horror films, right? How do you get a novel scare, you know? Let's see. How's the music? Is it all right? I feel like I was not really balancing that too well last night. To have so many people around last night was just... I kind of expected to have issues with my camera. It was like issues with camera and sound were both very present. Radical acceptance skills were like locked in last night of just yes and okay. That too, huh? All right. And so it is. Reader mode. Let's go into ye old timey reader mode. Bet you got some movies in Heller Plus recommending that. I guess that's not really a recommendation, but I like bonkers. Bonkers could be a good thing. I could go either way. There's a spectrum of bonkers that could be recommended or not at all. Sensory overload. It was a little bit, I mean, no more so than usual, really. I just have a hard time keeping up with chat during a cooking stream. Like, we talked a little bit about inattention as it relates to, like, how we learn, or why we, well, it's several fold as it relates to, like, neurology, right? But part and parcel to how we learn, and there really only is so much that at any given time we can pay attention to, which is why we find like repeat visits of listening to music and movies and you know, books and stories that we enjoy, why we enjoy revisiting those, because we'll find something new to appreciate the next time around. So like that same level of like cognitive inattention happens while I'm streaming at any rate. I think that happens to all of us. But especially while cooking, while I'm like following a recipe, a burner, a timer, and then, you know, even with my tablet, my chat's like, I need to fix that. That's some dark. I like my dark. We hold space for our dark parts and our funny parts. I like my dark parts and my funny parts. I embrace the dark parts and funny parts that are in me. And I recognize the dark parts and funny parts that are in you. It's the poetry of being human, I think. Yeah, in retrospect, I probably ought to have done like just a standard OG stream from The Office, but I'm glad I did the cooking stream anyway. I needed to cook. You know, it just overlaps often with what I need to do anyway, so I think people understand. If they don't, they're probably not a good fit to come back and hang around anyway. They're gonna be a bunch of little judgy Judies about it, you know. I don't even know if I did a great job, like, providing a preamble for what was going on yesterday. For those that don't know, I was the next to last stop on what's called a raid train. So everybody that's part of the Neurodivergent Plus stream team, which also includes me, relatively recently, everybody in that group who wanted to participated in a raid train where they started last Tuesday. And then Emmy Divergent and Fiery Ashes just put a schedule together between everybody who volunteered a time slot for 2 hours. And they could stream longer for 2 hours, it's just they had a 2-hour block for every person overlapping from like midnight Tuesday through, midnight last night. And I was the next to last stop. So that's what was going on there. It was just kind of a quick way to provide some live introductions for some, if not all of the members of Neurodivergent Plus. I met some really cool people that way that I otherwise wouldn't have been exposed to. I really enjoyed Fiery Ashes stream last night too. I kept them up while I was cleaning up the kitchen. But yeah, a lot of fine homies, and everybody in there's pretty, like myself, pretty transparent about their journey, our journey, with managing our mental health needs, personal and provider navigation, you know, as it goes. And I found several people with similar experiences are pretty motivated to try to reduce friction in navigating that system, and a needlessly over-complex system sometimes. So it was very cool. Heather, I'm gonna need to get like I think you dig on some vegan recipes. I'm gonna need to see what you're up to sometime if you want to share one with me. I'm gonna throw it down. But as for the movie, yeah, I don't always go in on horror. Like, I'm pretty selective. Like, if it's gonna be horror, I want it to be not just like a gore fest. I don't do much on like the novelty body horror type of films, but if there's an actual story to be told and, you know, something to glean from that, of like, oh, this is a metaphor for like insecure attachment or capitalism or whatever, like if there's something we can glean from that, as opposed to like, oh look, sexual assault and decapitation, and wow, that's great. I just don't dig on that shit. So like the slaughterhouse type stuff or whatever that genre is, not for me. But what did I like? Years ago, Event Horizon broke me and reshaped me and made me anew. Not a little body horror in it, but it was more like sci-fi with some interesting religious themes, and yeah, I saw that way too young, to be honest. But I still, that's one that I'd still kind of enjoy rewatching because it just so was effectively scary. Weapons is a pretty interesting mystery. There's a wild twist. You might like Together, which more relationship codependency metaphor-y. I saw that too. Alison Brie and Who is that? Franco? Who's that? Who's that Franco kid? Franco kid, we're like the same age. Who's that Franco kid? Who's in that magic movie? I know who he is. They're cute. I liked her in Glow. Glow was kind of excellent to me. I don't know if they're gonna do any more of that, but I was curious about it. That one looked a little body horror-y too, but maybe I say that and like I'm curious about the Clayface movie. That seems like pretty well aligned with that. I can be curious. I can wait for it to come out on DVD if I have to. I can wait for it to come out on video. Not as much as you thought. Okay. Yeah, the previews. I never know what to go by, right? The previews. The previews these days give so much away to provide a draw. But yeah, the previews made it look like they were locked in, sticking together. Intellectual humility is linked less to political and religious polarization across the board. Polarization in this case, of course, meaning extreme one direction or the other. A new study published in the Journal of Positive Psychology indicates that people who score higher intellectual humility tend to show less political and religious polarization, regardless of whether they are Republican, Democrat, Christian, or atheist. The link held across different measures, including self-reported attitudes and behavioral indicators of hostility towards ideological outgroups, that often remain significant even after accounting for the strengths of a person's belief. And that's often the case where like the biggest pain points come from within us, right? It's that incredulous feeling of someone not representing our core values, and they're an other, and they're from a evolutionary psychology. From an evolutionary psychology standpoint, it's one of those things we kind of passively recognize as they are an out group from our in group. They don't represent our values, therefore they belong to another social sphere. And some aspects of our development can be kind of rigid, black and white, us them kind of thinking. But it doesn't always have to cloud, cloud or impair our executive function, where we can think a little more reasonably and less, sometimes irrationally, about the anger towards another group who doesn't reflect our values, because it doesn't always serve a purpose outside of just validating ourselves to do so. Did it give me a quick little pan? There's zombie. It's supposed to stay here unless I slouch. It's supposed to stay kind of fixed on me now. I had to put the little marker on my beak. Put a little marker on my beak so it stays on me for the most part. Also, Zombie, you should recognize this song. And yes, everybody follow Zombie if you didn't catch that URL earlier. Every once in a while it does something. I tried to set it to where it's like pretty well on me. I see what it did. I wish it would do that in like more reactive moments when it matters. Like when I'm really hamming it up, you know. Nah. See, it's not gonna do it then. When I'm getting real rubber-faced with it. Intellectual humility refers to the recognition that one's knowledge and understanding are limited, where the like opposite of that, and this is something more associated with the right than the left, unfortunately, and that doesn't mean that the left isn't guilty of it. Plenty of people are. This is the opposite of Dunning-Kruger. Dunning-Kruger, of course, being the theory that you overestimate your fund of knowledge about a familiar topic. So an overconfidence, effectively bullshitting yourself and trying to convince others that you have expertise over a domain that you don't. So a common trope for that over the last 5 years is people claiming that they're like vaccine experts or infection control experts as it related to masks and like droplet precautions and that sort of thing. FYI, COVID cases are back up and bad in Texas and measured by wastewater. But just a quick example of that as we kind of see it represented kind of in the real. And then it's kind of twofold as somebody reinforces their Dunning-Kruger is a cognitive distortion where in the face of information that conflicts with what they already believe, they're going to be more likely to reinforce what they already believe, which sucks. That erodes over time. That sort of like cognitive distortion erodes over time, but it usually only happens if somebody within their in-group, as opposed to their out-group, feeds them that information. And a couple of things. It's kind of like somebody going to therapy. They have to be curious and motivated to do so. So then they're more likely to change their minds. But if you find yourself in, someone with opposing views and you're having those conversations, this doesn't always work, but one motivational interviewing type question to lead with is, what would it take to change your mind? What information would change your mind? And like I said, it doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. It kind of helps soften because it provides a little spoon-fed introspection. What would it take to change your mind? And they might just take pause other than just being readily attacked for what they might expect the conversation to go by. Hi, Thrash and Crash. Good to see you. Good luck. You've effectively heightened my vigilance and look behind me. What do I need luck? Am I hiding from something? Thank you. I know what you mean. I think I know what you mean. You're saying that lovingly with the best intention. Thank you. Yeah, right here at the beginning. I feel good. I feel good about this. I feel positively. We've set our intentions to have a good time and to take luck. You take luck, Thrash. You take luck. I give it to you too. From me to you. Give some from me to you. No, thank you very much. So with that, intellectual humility kind of being the opposite of Dunning-Kruger, it involves a willingness to revise one's views when presented with new evidence, the ability to separate personal identity from beliefs, and a respect for the perspective of others. And that ties directly into empathy, right? Which the data also supports that more people are empathetic on the left than they are on the right. While it does not require abandoning one's convictions, it emphasizes openness, curiosity, and a readiness to acknowledge that one could be wrong. And that matters. That matters in like every conversation. Especially for me, I would want anybody watching my stream to participate if I ever say something that I, am not able to cite the source of, because when it comes to like significant information, it matters. Past research has tied intellectual humility to ideological rigidity, more tolerance for opposing views, and a greater willingness to engage constructively with people who hold different beliefs. In the United States, political and religious divisions are deeply intertwined, with each often reinforcing one another. Political polarization, particularly the affective kind, affective in this case meaning change, combines disagreement with active dislike of the other side, has reached historically high levels, and I think we can observe that anyway. It's one of those things where like we see the data just kind of reinforce what we kind of already suspect, but we do witness that with the polarization, especially of the right. I don't know that the left spectrum is really caught up, especially to what they could probably get away with. Especially the Dems, they could arguably be more left, considering they've allowed the party on the right side to just go extremely right. I think it's time for them to be a little more ambitious, because intellectual humility aligns closely with interventions shown to reduce polarization, such as promoting accurate perceptions of the outgroup and encouraging respectful intergroup contact. The researchers wanted to know whether its effects would be consistent across political and religious divides. They also sought to determine whether these patterns held regardless of the specific group identities involved. I think that matters quite a bit to keep this in mind, especially from like a neuroplasticity, interpersonal development type of skill set to bolster. Because practicing bridging the divide, it couldn't hurt at this point, right? Previous studies found that intellectual humility was related less to political and religious polarization, but these two forms of polarization were assessed independently in relation to intellectual humility. Political and religious polarization often deeply intertwined. Moreover, if intellectual humility is powerful for understanding less polarization, then it should be related to less polarization across belief domains and identities. Thus, I simultaneously examine religious and political polarization in relation to intellectual humility. No small number here. The researchers recruited participants through an online panel, first screening 1,000 people to identify those who identified either as Christian or atheist, and then either as Republican or Democrat. They yielded a final sample of 473 adults, while predominantly white and evenly split between men and women, with 44% identifying as Republican, 56% as Democrat. Most participants were Christian, with the remainder identifying as atheist. Participants completed several measures. Intellectual humility was assessed using the Comprehensive Intellectual Humility Scale, which I want to look that up. I want to know what that looks like. Which captures 4 dimensions: independence of intellect and ego, openness of revising one's viewpoint, respect for others' viewpoints, and lack of intellectual overconfidence. Polarization was measured in 2 ways. First, participants rated their attitudes towards the political and religious outgroups on items related to social contact, favorability, emotional warmth. I give that just indefinitely, don't I? Emotional warmth and prejudice. Second, a behavioral task. Participants were asked to assign tangram puzzles of varying difficulty to an outgroup member, with the opportunity to make the task easier or harder for the other person, and reported their motives for doing so. The study included measures of variables that often predict polarization, such as intolerance of uncertainty, distress intolerance, moralization of political beliefs, and degree to which participants' political and religious beliefs were central to their identity. I'm glad it mentioned distress intolerance, because part of what it seemed to be referencing, like loosely earlier with intellectual humility, kind of sounds like it involves some DBT skills, some dialectical behavioral therapy skills, because with DBT, it was, a therapy designed to work with persons, initially work with persons who would be diagnosed with like borderline personality, who are highly sensitive and tend to perceive social slights where none may exist, but be feeling particularly vulnerable and hurt should something happen, or have just some insecurity that needs to be met. Such that it comes out pretty rigid and black and white, and then DBT skills often ask someone to kind of synthesize opposite beliefs and determine kind of what lies in the middle. What is the truth of considering multiple perspectives, and then in turn kind of heightening their critical analysis and taking things less personally. And an ability to like soften and not be as quick to anger, so some distress tolerance there, and some emotional regulation to come with that. And I think those skills are beneficial to any of us as it relates to processing like political information, because we do tend to get pretty easily charged. And so often is the case that articles and the way media is presented to us anyway is by design meant to elicit like a pretty big reaction anyway. So the more tools that we have in our toolkit to like process this information, the less likely we are to harm ourselves and others as a result of it being in front of us. Did I make that make sense? I think I made that make sense. Across the board, higher intellectual humility was linked to lower levels of that too. There's a time for that too. Though when it comes to debate, the right to shake your fist ends the moment it touches someone else's nose. So the saying goes. Study also included measures of variables that often predict polarization, such as intolerance of uncertainty. I just read that part. Across the board, higher intellectual humility was linked to lower levels of political and religious polarization. This was true for both self-reported attitudes and behavioral measures of hostility towards outgroups. Yeah, I think I'm in a better place now with a lot of what I was just describing as compared to where we were like 5 years ago. No, Sultry, no, that's a new redeem, so I'm sure it still like shows new in the carousel. For that matter, I'm glad it works. I'm glad it works, because when I first put that down, Heather had tested it, and it didn't, so... The relationships tended to be consistent across different dimensions of intellectual humility, although openness to revising one's viewpoint was generally weaker and the weakest predictor, especially in the behavioral task. It was interesting to see the results did not vary across methods of assessment. That is, we used self-report and experimental measures of polarization. Intellectual humility was related to less polarization for the self-report measures and the experimental measures of polarization. These findings provide additional support for the robustness of the relationship, as it's not solely driven by the shared method variance, that everything is self-reported. When the researchers compared political and religious domains directly, they found almost no differences in how strongly intellectual humility related to polarization, which to me kind of speaks to the different cognitive skills that are associated with processing that information separate from one's like spiritual values. And then one doesn't also have to assume that just because someone's Christian they are a far-right bigot, because that's not always the case either. We know plenty of religious people that aren't pieces of shit. The relationships also held across different group identities. Republicans and Democrats showed similar patterns, as did Christians and atheists. Notably, the symmetry between Christians and atheists is striking given the lack of middle ground between their worldviews, suggesting that intellectual humility may reduce animosity even across deeply opposed existential positions. And that is interesting to point out. That too, and like, there's a similar skill set used too, with like how you soften and the grace you're affording to someone in having conversations about differences in, you know, existential attitudes, beliefs, and everything else. Existential satisfaction, I think, is the goal there for anybody. And if somebody's found that, there's really no point in rattling their cage, you know? So long as it doesn't conflict directly with someone else's ability to thrive, right? Most of these effects remain significant even after controlling for belief strength. This suggests the link between intellectual humility and reduced polarization is not simply a byproduct of holding weaker convictions. On average, intellectual humility explained an additional 3 to 5% of the variance polarization beyond what could be accounted for. That's cool. I feel like I need to get the atheist symbol tattooed on me because I have an angel and a devil. Oh, wait, like you already have an angel and a devil tattoo? Or are you saying that, like, metaphorically of the sub-personalities within? I think I've got a devil and a devil. On your calves. Okay, that's cool. What is the atheist symbol? I don't actually know what that looks like. I'm a bad atheist. Well, I guess I'm more of like a secular humanist anyway. I don't know if do we have a symbol? Do we have a symbol? What is it? What is our virtue signal? I want to be able to pop the light on to the sky and broadcast. What is my virtue signal? What is the atheist symbol? Avatar. What am I looking for? Insignia? Oh, is that it? Is it that cursive A? I don't know if that's necessarily cursive. Is it that cute A? Is it Kid A? Is it one of Radiohead's greatest albums they were referencing? It's an A of some sort. Oh, they have a website. They've organized. Ooh, I like that with the subatomic reference going on there. That's cool. Or would that be atomic? That's not really subatomic, is it? You may notice the, wait, I'm sure they're describing it here. The international symbol for atheism has long been needed. When American atheists formed in 1963, a contemporary scientific symbol was chosen. This acknowledges that only through use of scientific analysis and free open inquiry can humankind reach out for a better life. And a shared distribution of resources, not gatekeeping that knowledge, not putting that knowledge behind a paywall. That's also worth mentioning. Recognizing a new atomic era. Okay, yeah, atomic. Keyword, boom. But also emphasizing the truths of older scientific findings. An atomic whirl was chosen. Interesting thing that we'll segue to in one of the other articles. It references the rate of progression and how fast we're learning because of the tools we have available and how rapidly we can make corrections to outdated data, which is why like the field of like psychology and neuroscience has seen so many changes over the last like even 50 years, because the rate of information and newer, more reliable findings are available at a much faster rate as compared to like hundreds of years ago, where you wouldn't see like a significant update until like every 50 years. It happens much faster. One of the articles I'm going to get to references that too. Just a fun kind of aside. Okay, yeah, I mean, I think it's not my body, but for what it's worth, I think that is kind of a cool tattoo. I'm sure there's a meaning behind this like incomplete orbit around the A. It just looks like the way they uploaded that image, like it's not formatted correctly. I would almost want that closed in. I'm sure there's a reason for it though. Maybe it represents that we're always learning. Our journey is never complete until we die. Okay, back on the intellectual humility. I mean, I think we got the gist of it. We can only draw conclusions about intellectual humility and polarization in the context of Republicans and Democrats and Christians and atheists. Additional research is needed to clarify the generalizability of our results when examining other political, religious, and irreligious identities. Excuse me. The researchers suggest that future work should investigate intellectual humility and other political and religious groups, examine more diverse irreligious identities, and explore how interventions might foster intellectual humility over time. They also highlight the need to determine whether increasing intellectual humility can causally reduce polarization rather than simply being associated with it. As always, there may be a correlation, but that doesn't mean that just because two things are happening at the same time that one is directly responsible for causing the other. So that's cool. I'll drop this in the Discord along with everything else after we wrap up too. What else we got? More evidence to support that exercise is good for you. We don't necessarily have to get into that because I do want to try to be aware of time today. How upbringing shapes decisions, music, and emotions. Where's the article that referenced critical thinking? Okay, so this ties more so into what we just read. So let's go with that. So if we're talking about critical thinking and not just taking a deep dive into like DBT skills, it's an article from Psychology Today by Dr. Leister. Also, Sultry, where would that tattoo go? Like, you might have already said. The angel, the devil, and the legs. Go over the belly button. The explosion of information, double-edged sword. I think this catches up to what I was referencing a second ago. We live in an age of unprecedented access to information. That's right. It's still kind of awesome to, like, marvel, at least for those of us who are, like, I don't know, late 20s and above. You know, we've grown up with this, like, sort of gradual introduction into like this newer information age. We kind of saw the internet like in its infancy and the beginning of like smart technology in its infancy, and like watched its rollout and robustness increase. Like we've been able to like witness the evolution of that versus being born 15 years ago, you know, and just immediately having access to these things and not really knowing an existence without them. It's kind of, I don't know, that's just something I take pause and like reflect on kind of a lot. Just like how amazing this ride has been so far. and scary sometimes. The explosion of information, a double-edged sword. We live in a range of unprecedented access to information. Every day we are bombarded with articles and news reports, social media posts, podcasts, and research studies. I like the research studies component. With just a few taps of a screen, we can access a seemingly infinite supply on any topic. There's a catch. Not all information is created equal. Does this turn into like a media literacy type of prose? Because that's also equally important. Different sources have different motives. Some strive for objectivity, others push an agenda, and some prioritize engagement over accuracy. With technology, while technology has democratized knowledge, again, so long as it's not behind a paywall, it has also made it harder to discern fact from fiction. For some, the influx of conflicting information has made it even more. So, like, the most intelligent individuals are vulnerable to misinformation. And yeah, that matters. There are actual, misinformation campaigns that take place. So it's not just like harmless as, oh, Mima shared the AI of the bear jumping on the trampoline. Isn't that cute? I don't know if that was in anybody's feed recently, but that was AI too. There was a couple of things that went viral that I think even some with like some pretty discerning media literacy were still sharing in. The bear one looks kind of believable until you just kind of question, like, okay, there's no real way it would have climbed up there, and it just looked a little too clean. But there was like a bear video and a bunny video, it was like a couple of weeks ago, that went pretty viral. And determined to be AI, the bunny video was easier to identify because they kept like, there were several bunnies on a trampoline. As it was bouncing, they kind of disappeared behind one another. So that was easier to catch, but all the same, it's not always as harmless as something like that, And the problem with accounts like those is they're going to circulate something like that to then bring in, worse slop later for, all the right clickbait reasons, or all the wrong clickbait reasons for that matter. But it is hard to reconcile when we see that, right, Sultry? Because it's just like, oh yeah, cute. Oh, now. Doubling down on medical knowledge. Nowhere is the problem more pronounced than in the medical field. Well, we can already see like where misinformation has resulted in literal like casualty events, right? As recently as Friday, there was a shooting of someone trying to kill people associated with like vaccine research, or at least people who they thought were associated with like vaccine research, because so much misinformation has maligned the scientific community and biomedical research. And that doesn't mean that it always has a great history, but to completely demonize persons trying to save lives, and very smart people doing so, it results in very real world problems and a swell of social spheres, fostering distrust towards other communities who would otherwise be looking out to protect them, whether they believe in the science or not. So yeah, there is a direct problem when it comes to fostering and allowing and not confronting propagation of deliberate misinformation. Studies suggest that medical knowledge doubles approximately every 73 days. So that's kind of what I was getting at earlier, of just the rate of progression versus the staggering like intervals at which we would update, like, say, textbooks that would then inform medical procedures, or how we understand regions of the brain and how they work. But now, yeah, because we have so many robust technologies, CTs, MRIs, EEGs, all of the above and more, we can study functions in relation to stimuli and get a much better understanding of how brains respond under stress, or when they're happy, or having a conversation in the presence of a loved one, what lights up. So it's not as much, speculation. I feel like companies are testing the waters of AI believability, like using us as a focus group. I think that's a fair I think it's a fair perspective to take, because we already know that the majority of our participation in products like Meta are all being used to kind of like mine our data. And so many apps that we use on our phones, and user license agreement, is having us opt in to more than cookie tracking. How long we stay hovered over an icon before we scroll. Like, all of that information is sold back to data brokers to then make other influential decisions with. So, like, yeah, with AI where that's presented, it's hard not to expect there is some sort of like surreptitious malintent with its use. I'll have to find the study later, but I think there is a growing disgust with like a shared disgust, regardless of like party affiliation, with use of AI. And then growing awareness of, and this is easier to find, like growing awareness of AI just kind of exhausting our finite resources, principally water. For those that don't know, the amount of water, like clean water, it takes to cool down like the server rooms where AI is generated is completely fucking over neighboring communities where these AI data centers are. And it is not replacing the water, it is consuming at a rate commensurate to the population's use already. And so if we allow that to perpetuate, we need water to surprise us. Surprise! We need water to surprise people. We need water to survive. Surprise to no one. We're kind of comprised of like 90% water. We sweat it out. We need it back in us. We need it clean. We need it sustainable. We don't want to buy it from megalomaniacs and monopolies like Nestle, where the CEO of Nestle was a handful of years ago was on record saying that he wanted to commercialize and sell every bit of water available, of the opinion that, and I'm paraphrasing, but of the opinion that water should not be freely available as a resource. So, AI bad. AI bad. Yeah, I'll have to find the other studies that I'd seen on that, but I think there is like a growing disgust, disuse of AI. The novelty over the last, like, so relatively new and like are accessing it, right? Hearing, a funny, phony song, or just seeing bizarre images that we never would have that were used like comedically. I think the novelty has worn itself out pretty quickly because we've kind of heard the same joke repeatedly for the last 2 years as it relates to like most things AI. So just opinion, right? For me, I think the novelty has kind of weared off, and then there is a growing communal awareness of just the very real problems associated with its use. It's not just, I'm just using it to help me compose an email, LOL. It's much more detrimental than that. Doubling of medical knowledge. This is really cool. Studies suggest that medical knowledge doubles approximately every 73 days. Compare this to the early 1950s, when it took nearly 50 years for medical knowledge to double. But this expansion of knowledge has led to extraordinary advancements. It has also made it increasingly difficult for experts to keep up. Without critical thinking skills, individuals, both medical professionals and the public, can struggle to differentiate sound science and evidence from misleading claims. And we saw a bit of that. We saw a good bit of that as data changed on. Well, as data changed, as it kind of correlated to like vaccine hesitancy, right? And safety and reliability of like mRNA vaccines rolling out and that sort of thing. While that was happening, the CDC was making recommendations about how long to quarantine, right? And where and what types of masks were effective. Originally saying that you could wear like a cloth mask, and then we found out like, well, cloth masks really don't do much of anything. They're barely as effective as just raw dogging it. versus like an N95 surgical mask is okay, an N95 is much better. KN95s are much easier accessible, but that was also paired with a shortage of production at one time, so they can make those recommendations, and then it's presented to the common public as, yeah, but we don't have access to those. So what do we do in the interim? And then conflicting guidelines on quarantine again, and what you can and can't do. And while those who understand that data is going to change, and in light of new evidence that can challenge or reinform, and those who expect that to happen, just knowing how science works, there are persons who expected that and adapted to the change, where others perceived those changes and, moving of the goalpost of guidelines as a slight to reinform their biases of like, see, those white coat fucking nerds don't know what they're doing, they're trying to kill it, or just trying to take away our freedoms. Like a lot of stuff like that would get reinforced, and that's just one example of 1,000 that you're probably already thinking of. The infodemic, when too much information becomes dangerous. The WHO has coined a term for the spread of vast amounts of both accurate and misleading information during a health crisis, the infodemic. This was most evident during the COVID-19 pandemic, when the rapid dissemination of contradictory information sowed confusion and fear. People were faced with a dizzying array of claims, some grounded in science, others based in speculation or outright falsehoods. People slurping up some horse deworming paste that is not an antiviral. In such an environment, critical thinking is not just a skill, it is necessary for survival. The dangers of an unquestioned orthodox view. Throughout history, science has evolved by challenging orthodox views. The widely accepted and sometimes flawed mainstream narrative's consensus is important, but it's not infallible. Some of the greatest scientific breakthroughs came from individuals who dared to question and accept the wisdom at great personal cost. Ignaz, I don't know this one. Samwise Gamgee? Is it? No, it's Ignaz Semmelweis. Semmelweis. Yeah, we know that from Sound of Music. Hand washing and the backlash. In the 19th century, Ignaz Semmelweis discovered that simple hand washing could drastically reduce the spread of infections in hospitals. I saw a guy at the gym the other day just do his thing and left without washing his hands. I didn't realize grown people were still not washing their hands when their hand is on their dick and then they pee and getting splashed back in a urinal, because urinals are woefully designed and they're abysmal and disgusting. And wash your hands after using one. You didn't. I was appalled. I hadn't seen that in my adult life in quite some time, by someone that I wouldn't expect an age-appropriate behavior to come from. Hey, whatever. His findings contradicted the prevailing medical beliefs of the time, leading to ridicule and rejection by his peers. He was eventually institutionalized and died in obscurity. You exist at a time where you try to posit that we do not have a a heliocentric view of the universe. There's something beyond that. You could be hanged. There's a very short time frame where you would be hanged for claiming belief in one god because polytheism was the way to go, and then in just a shorter time frame you would have been hanged and flogged and hanged, I guess would have been the order, for subscribing to belief in polytheism versus mono. We're so weird as humans. Barry Marshall, Halciobacter pylori and ulcers. For decades, peptic ulcers were attributed to stress and diet. That is until Barry Marshall, an Australian physician, proved that a bacterium, Heliobacter pylori, was a culprit. His findings were met with skepticism, so he famously drank a culture of the bacteria himself to prove his point. Eventually, his work was validated, earning him a Nobel Prize, not before years of opposition from the medical community. Discovery of neurotransmitters. In the early 20th century, it was widely believed that nerve signaling was purely electrical. However, Otto Lowy proposed that chemicals, later named neurotransmitters, played a crucial role in neural communication. His work originated from a dream which initially was dismissed before gaining acceptance. Today, his discovery forms the foundation of neuroscience and pharmacology. It's funny that so many so-called pioneers in early psychology and psychiatry, they had like visions, right? It was very woo-woo before more evidence-based practices like really informed their work. But like Freud and Jung, both were into some pretty woo-woo shit. At least what we would consider woo-woo shit today. And yeah. Stanley Prusiner, Prions and the New Biology of Disease. Stanley Prusiner faced enormous skepticism when he proposed that misfolded proteins, prions, were responsible for degenerative brain diseases like Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease and mad cow disease. The concept of protein-only infections were seen as heretical, yet through persistence and rigorous research proved the critics wrong. It was awarded a Nobel Prize. Also, prion disease is one of those reasons why we don't cannibalize each other. For that matter, eat each other's brains. There's some cultures that have, and subsequently had a nasty case of prion disease. One of the last things they ever had, for that matter. Challenging orthodox views during the COVID-19 pandemic. During COVID-19, which is it's still around, numerous scientists and physicians who questioned the dominant narrative faced backlash. Some raised concerns about lockdown policies, vaccine efficacy, and in different populations, and the censorship of alternate viewpoints. Hey, I promise I didn't read ahead earlier. While not all dissenting views are proved correct, the scientific method drives on an open debate and rigorous scrutiny. The scientific method thrives on open debate and rigorous scrutiny. When dissent is suppressed, scientific progress is hindered. Good question. Are we teaching students what to think instead of how to think? A major concern in modern education is that students are often trained to memorize and regurgitate information rather than critically analyze it. Standardized tests reward rote learning, but true intellectual growth requires questioning, synthesizing, and evaluating evidence. This also ties directly into an article that we read, was it last week, about how use of language learning models is quite literally eroding what we would consider critical thinking skills, but quite really, like by way of brain scans, resulting in younger brains that are still developing becoming less adaptive, less online. There's less synaptic activity occurring because of the kind of shortcuts that were being taken by putting research projects together while relying on language learning models to take shortcuts versus kind of take the long way around, or the way around that would otherwise teach you something. Without critical thinking skills, students become passive consumers of information rather than active evaluators. This makes them more susceptible to misinformation and less equipped to navigate complex real-world issues. Instead of simply teaching students what to think, education should focus on teaching them how. Well, yeah, one of a million changes to make to the education system that we will see eventually, right? As we reform and recover, there will be, and I think we all need to hear this, there will be an existence post-Trump, and we'll make it happen. Evaluate sources before accepting a claim. Examine the credibility of the source. Is the information peer-reviewed? Is there a financial bias? And that is something that doesn't always get a lot of attention, because you have to consider, like, okay, the information's presented to you, but if you're qualifying the bona fides, look to see if there is any conflict of interest, because if it is actual research where they receive funding for it, they legally have to claim if there was some other financial incentive. Like if a pharmaceutical company does their own research on their own product, it doesn't necessarily mean that it corrupts their data. They just have to acknowledge, like, hey, we funded this, so we do have what would otherwise be considered a conflict of interest. Or if somebody's like a paid speaker, they have to acknowledge, like, who's funding them. But not everybody knows that, so it's worth highlighting. understanding scientific uncertainty. Science is an evolving process. So in my verbiage, I like to say science is tentative, right? It's ever changing, just like we are. That doesn't mean it's not reliable, right? Because a lot goes into just positing a theory in the first place. My O was so delayed. I got a feeling what it was probably connected to, but hey, I was trying to plant the seeds of hope. Even if sometimes we're planting seeds of fruit that we won't get to enjoy, or the shade of trees that we won't get to sit under. It doesn't stop me. Seek multiple perspectives, engage with diverse viewpoints. Even with those you disagree with, understanding opposing arguments and understanding that opposing arguments sharpens analytical thinking. And this brings me to today's sponsor. This stream is brought to you by Ground News. Ground News sources information from multiple sites and then lets you determine based on the presentation. I'm kidding. I do see a lot of ads for Ground News lately. It doesn't seem bad. By way of be wary of emotional appeals. I would say other cognitive distortions can be baked into that too, especially as it relates to like healthcare information. There's an appeal to nature fallacy that comes up a lot. An appeal to nature fallacy. You see it in the marketing of like, hey, this is organic, it's of the earth, therefore it's better for you than these nasty pharmaceutical blah blah blah. That's just marketing to pay attention to. It doesn't mean it's always bad. It's just there is an appeal to nature fallacy that sometimes overrides someone's otherwise good decision making into thinking they can, I don't know, over ingest like vital greens their way to longevity. Foster open inquiry. Encourage discussion and debate in educational settings. Genuine learning comes from questioning and engaging, not just memorization. The central role of critical thinking. In a world where information is abundant but truth is elusive, critical thinking is more essential than ever. From medicine to media, from classrooms to social policy, the ability to analyze, question, and challenge ideas is fundamental to progress. History has shown that those who dared to think differently, often at great personal cost, were the ones who propelled science forward. As we navigate this area of rapid knowledge expansion and digital information overload, let's ensure we teach the next generation not just what to know, but how to think. Several really good points in that, especially like there towards the end. Big thing to reflect on though, that still like gives me a little bit of pause that I love. Our medical knowledge doubles approximately every 73 days compared to the early 1950s when it took nearly 50 years for medical knowledge to double. Just think at the rate of progression and why it would make sense that, say like 5 years ago, getting updated guidelines on the benefits of how long you have to isolate if you think you have COVID symptoms, like why that was changing, even though for some people it reinforced their negative stigma and heightened their maybe fund of paranoid ideation. Whatever was coming up for them. There's a way to explain it, I think. Tut tut, good evening. Hi, hello, howdy, hey. I am done with this, but I'll drop this in the Discord too. This was worthwhile. I think it tied pretty well into the other article. How are we doing on time? How am I doing on time? Did that eat up an hour? Did I do it? Tut tut, I'm glad you're here. How has your weekend been? Did you get some sunlight this weekend? I hope so. I got a little bit. I was not exclusively a cave troll. Thank you for shouting out Tut. Ooh, Once Human. That's a fun watch. Where is my Twitch dashboard? There's my Twitch dashboard. Hi, Twitch dashboard. It is about time to run an ad. Wow. Look at me go. I've just been barking like Dino for an hour straight. I gotta take a break. We gotta hydrate. I gotta top off my cup of brown. And switch to decaf because it's almost 9:30. It's a school night. It's a school night. Tax-free weekend is coming to a close. I hope you all got something good for yourselves. And if you are parents, took advantage. I know school hasn't started everywhere. I think for some it started last week, others this one. I think students on average are in school like a month longer than they used to be. Thank you, Sultry. Oh, see, now I've got my incoming ad break banner. I've got 10 minutes. You can buy 10 minutes. I'm good at buying 10 minutes. I can soak that up. You down with OTG? Yeah. You know me. It's good to see you. What do you know, Joe? Da, 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 da. Just chewed the fat on a couple of articles that I will drop in the Discord while we take a break. I'm gonna put them in the research channel in the Discord. If anybody, you know, wants to keep up with us when we're not here, would love for you to be in the Discord with us.
This is a magic house.
It's a magic house, and you know, movie nights some Thursdays, and we'll organize some family game nights. Tellerand gifted me a copy of Peak. I need to play Peak soon. Anybody else who has Peak? So we're organizing a night for that. Oh yeah, and I have like a couple of special streams to plan, don't I? So based on the fundraiser that we just did, the NCA National Children's Alliance fundraiser, we hit my goal such that we got a couple of things. I've got an IRL stream to do for a I pick which botanical garden I want to go to. Botanic. It's Botanic Garden. There's the Dallas Arboretum, which is really cool, and I literally haven't been to since I was married. And then there's the Fort Worth Botanic Gardens, which we've been to. I've done like an IRL stream a long time ago there, but it was with an old phone, and it was a little chopped and screwed. Intermittently pretty, though, especially when I was on camera. But I'm thinking about going back there just because I really like their little Japanese garden area. We could feed some koi, just be real chill with it. But the other thing was I need to bring my Super Famicom over here because we unlocked something that I haven't played with yet, and it looks kind of weird, but you know, my favorite kind of weird, like good weird. Speaking of good weird, did the camera follow me? Look how golden I am, my god. I can fix. Okay, auto white balance. Why auto white balancing? I'm also, I am way more pale than this looks. I assure you. The sun barely touches me. But we get to play this soon. So the one other game on the Super Nintendo that wasn't like edutainment or Mario Paint that used the mouse. So we'll throw that down soon. I need to pick a day. For that. Maybe I'll put a survey in the Discord and just find a day that works for everybody. Because here's the thing, when I drop this down, it's just going to be for one day only, and it's going to disrupt our progress in Twilight Princess. How long did Wind Waker take us? Wind Waker took us like almost 3 months. Because of other disruptions. Let's make the goal for Twilight Princess less than 2 months. I think maybe we can finish Twilight Princess in less than 2 months. I think if I do a couple of Sunday like long plays, which partially was the intention today, that would have happened. So be on the lookout for a couple of special stream announcements where I'll take us on a field trip and we'll go to the Botanic Gardens. Retro Raji actually recommended a gimbal for me. When I ran into him at Midwest Gaming Classic when I was with Zombie, we ran into Retro Raji there. He had this gimbal that he was using on his phone, and I wanted to know more about that. I told him directly, I whispered in his ear and said, I'm interested in this. And he said, please don't do that again, give me space. And I said, fine, but while we're at it, can you please tell me where you got your gimbal? He did. So I have my own now. We're gonna take that with us too, because you know, sometimes when I travel, I'm able to like poot over to the aquarium. Like when I travel to Tulsa, sometimes I can poot over to the Tulsa Aquarium because they're open late on Tuesdays. Last time I went there too was a little wonky because I couldn't see chat, but I think I fixed that. Anyhow, a couple of special streams coming up. I just need to pick a day. Yeah. And a long gestating one. I need to tell Sweet Grams that I haven't forgotten because they were directly instrumental in us hitting this goal. We had a big sub goal a couple of months back, and part of that goal was to do like a Dionysus cosplay and play Hades. Get my hair all purple, get me all cuted up, and do that. I haven't forgotten. I just need a budget to actually make the cosplay. Monies have gone to other things lately, but cosplay's still in the works. What else? I think that's all that's like coming up. I'm gonna change the stream category to retro, and we'll take a break. And this is one of many times where I will encourage you and remind you, especially the neurodivergent among us who may struggle with what is known as interoception. You may not always be aware and commensurately benefit from bringing awareness to your body meat that you're attached to. Scan your body meats from your toes to your tingles and notice where you've got some tingles need tuning. Could be a hunger pang to sate. Could be a thirst you have to quench. Could be some movement that you need. Any one of those things. Other sensory inputs that you may need to deepen your connection with yourself. That's what I want for you. If I am part of your recipe of continued wellness for the evening, thank you. I'm going to give you some movement, and I will be back in about 3 minutes. And then we'll continue Twilight Princess.